The Gaia Effect. Antic. Why is baby allocation so tightly controlled? Join the discussion in Social Hub Gamma. Are you still waiting for your child? Post your collection experiences now. Corp Chat. Collection Q&A session today at 4 p.m. Join us in Social Hub Beta. Martha Hamble lay still, her head facing the door. She felt nothing, numb, oblivious to the young nurse bustling around, checking her vitals and updating the medlog, unaware of her clothes tagged in an evidence bag on the floor, not seeing her father through the slim window in the door, gesturing angrily outside. Her eyes were unfocused, and a tear rolled down her cheek. The door banged open, making her flinch. A tall, broad-shouldered man stepped through the doorway, his bald head narrowly missing the top of the doorframe. "Out!" barked Martha's father at the frightened nurse, who immediately put down the medlog and swiftly left the room. Roger Hamble breathed heavily through his bulbous nose as he placed a bag of clothes on the floor by the end of the hospital bed. Unable to look at his daughter, he addressed the wall above her head. "I've made sure your file is redacted. This doesn't go any further. As soon as you're fit to leave, you'll come home and we'll forget this ugly mess." When Martha didn't respond, he nodded. "Good. I have a meeting at Force HQ." He moved forward half a step, hesitated, and nodded again before leaving. Martha watched the door close before touching her earcom. "Kira," she whispered. "You can't just leave. How am I supposed to get back by myself?" Anger had flushed Kira's cheeks as she stared at Jed, who shrugged helplessly. "It's not my call. I've no choice. You know I'd rather—" He trailed off, looking at the sleeping baby in Kira's arms. "It's not fair," Kira said softly, gazing down at the perfect bundle. "You haven't even held her yet." "I will. We're a family now." Jed kissed them both, and with a last look back, he was gone. Kira took a moment to compose her thoughts. "Right," she said. "We can do this, Grace." Bending slightly, she picked up the user manual care pack and her bag. Luckily, everything else was being delivered. All she had to do was get back to the apartment. But she didn't have the stroller and couldn't use a public skimmer. She had no way of getting home with the baby. They had planned to all walk back together, but Kira was feeling too nervous to walk by herself. What if Grace was too hot or too cold, or started crying, or wanted feeding, or she fell out of Kira's arms, or... Her earcom pinged. "Kira? Martha, is that you?" There was a long pause. "Yes, And I can't talk right now. No, wait. May I come over? Please, Something happened." Her voice broke and she was unable to continue. "What happened?" Kira asked, brow furrowed in concern. I just... Yes, come over. Use your fob if I'm not there. I won't be far behind you." Kira cancelled the call and gently stroked the cheek of the peaceful sleeping baby in her arms. "I wonder what that's all about," she pondered aloud before making her outgoing call. "I need a hover lift from Corp Medical to apartment 47, upper north, please. Mother and child, no luggage." As she began to walk towards the door, thinking about the long corridor and elevator journey down to the large foyer below, Kira felt suddenly small and extremely isolated. She paused before pressing the elevator's call button, not knowing if she could do this alone. "Let's just get home," she thought, "and then we can figure this out." Kira pressed the button and made sure she had a tight hold of her new baby. Anon 45. Images of Detective Jed Jenkins leaving wife alone at collection. J.M. Bish. Congratulations to KJ42 and Jenks. Can't wait to meet my granddaughter. InGen. In honour of my new niece, here are Corp Tech's latest baby tech teals. The starter pack was waiting when they got in. Kira gently placed the still sleeping Grace in her cube, then stood by her for a moment, unwilling to leave the baby alone. Eventually she began looking through the pack with high hopes. They were soon dashed. Despite their request for the least invasive option, there seemed to be a lot of gadgets. The WBW strip, What Baby Wants, which told you whether the baby was hungry, tired, or needed a nappy change. The self-feeding hover bottle that could be programmed for regular feeds and didn't require holding. Mother scent stickers for Kira to rub on her body and then place around the baby, and worst of all, the baby neural jack filled with nursery rhymes and early years education. As if I'm going to shove that into a newborn, thought Kira. She closed the box and pushed it to one side. Her academy dissertation had been on how much childcare had changed since the event. She wished it had been taken more seriously when she presented her findings. Using technology to program a baby just didn't feel right. Kira was sure that the touch of one person to another was a far more fulfilling experience. She stroked Grace's soft and wispy fair hair and smiled. If this was motherhood, it was very easy so far. Kira started checking her sweeps on her handheld while she waited for Martha. MS Child, we are submitting our 27th request for collection. Support our cause and sweep it out across the city. Martha ignored the nurse flapping round her as she dressed in the spare clothes her father had left. If she could just get out of here, she'd feel so much better. But not home, not yet. She needed the one person who understood her completely. She needed to talk about what had happened. She scrubbed her eyes angrily, tears threatening to spill down her face as she turned to face the nurse. I'm leaving. My personal locator will inform Force where to find me. You can't keep me here against my will. She pushed past the young woman, trying to keep her in the room. Med 4 AC. Hamble seen at Med Center. No comment status issued. Pete glanced across the hovercar at his partner. I'm sorry, Jenks, if it was up to me. It's all right, it's not your fault. Jed looked out the window as they passed the gleaming blue collection towers. I don't like leaving Kira on her own, and I didn't even get to hold the baby. I mean, it's collection day. Jed hit the front of the hovercar in anger. Do you even know what we're being pulled in for? Pete shook his head. Sink me. Probably just some tech head sticking his nose in. Pete began fiddling with the onboard sweep feed. After a few moments, he cleared his throat. Speaking of Corpus, is your sister coming to the baby homecoming? Jed knew Pete liked his sister Ingrid, although he wasn't sure why. She hadn't expressed any interest in Pete. All she cared about was her career at Corp Tech, and climbing the career ladder as quickly as possible. She didn't talk to Jed often, and was absolutely horrified to learn that he and Kira were planning to follow the long out-of-fashion natural approach to raising their baby. Yep, don't get too excited though. Why not? Pete turned slightly to look at Jed. Unless you're the latest piece of tech to hit the market, I doubt she'll show much interest. Don't you worry about that, Jenks. I have a plan, Pete said. They landed at Force HQ and walked through the hover bay. Security waved them onwards to meeting room 1. The chief stopped talking mid-sentence, and Roger Hamble looked up as the 2 detectives entered the room. Good, Hamble nodded. You're here. Sorry to pull you away, Jenkins. Big day and all, but I've got... Well, this needs to be sorted, and sorted out quick. He nodded again. Pete and Jed looked at each other in confusion. Sit down, detectives, the chief said. As of now, you 2 are the only ones cleared to work the rape case. Pete perched on the edge of his chair. Do we know who the victim is yet, sir? The rape victim was, The chief cleared his throat and looked up at Mr. Hamble, who was now pacing by the door. The victim was Martha Hamble. Jed frowned in surprise. He knew Martha. She was Kira's best friend. He had wondered this morning when working through the rape case details why the victim was nameless. Now he understood. The daughter of the marketing director of Fragging Corporation. And not just an assigned daughter. She was an actual maid-to-order. Obvious when you met her. Red hair and green eyes were only available to those with the right connections. Couple that with the creamy skin and freckles, and it literally set her apart from everyone else. Babies weren't grown like that for collection. It was extremely rare to grow your own these days, but when you were on the board, strings could be pulled. He was going to have to think of something to tell Kira before she got herself involved. Hamble cleared his throat. Her medical file has been redacted. I want nothing on official record, he said, not looking at either detective. You do your job and you find the bastard, and that's the end of it. Keep in contact. I want regular updates, and I want a fast resolution, Jenkins. I'm counting on you. See this through, and Corporation will look after you. He glanced at Pete. Both of you. Mr. Hamble checked his wristband, nodded, and left the meeting room. The detective stared at the chief, who was frowning. I don't need to tell you the firestorm will be in if anything, and I mean anything, goes wrong on this case. The chief jabbed his finger at each man. Barnes, Jenkins, you get to the bottom of this if it kills you, and you do it fast. You have full unit resources, but nothing leaves HQ, and you're not to bring anyone else in unless I authorise it, you hear? Get to work. Before the detective had a chance to react, the chief got up and walked out of the room. Frag! You know her, right? She's one of Kira's friends, isn't she? What? I mean, how do you process? Are you good? Jed nodded tightly. Face it, Pete, this just got personal, and I want to close this case fast. They began to set themselves up in the meeting room, moving furniture and setting up the internal monitors. Pete called up the case file and checked the progress made on the drone TV. About half the footage had been screened. No leads. Both detectives sat down and focused on the monitors in front of them, determined to be the one who caught sight of the perpetrator. Antic. Security lockdown at Force. Do you know what's happening? Upload now and keep the sweeps active. We need your input. 'Copy. Security lockdown at Force. Do you know what's happening? Upload now and keep the sweeps active. We need your input. 'Copy. Security lockdown at Force. Do you know what's happening? Upload now and keep the sweeps active. We need your input. 'Copy. Security lockdown at Force. Do you know what's happening? Upload now and keep the sweeps active. We need your input. 'Copy. Security lockdown at Force. Do you know what's happening? Upload now and keep the sweeps active. We need your input. 'Copy. Security lockdown at Force. Do you know what's happening? Upload now and keep the sweeps active. We need your input. 'Copy. Security lockdown at Force. Do you know what's happening? Upload now and keep the sweeps active. We need your input. 'Copy. Security lockdown at Force. Do you know what's hap The door chimed and Kira called out open. Grace steered and whimpered. Shh, 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 my darling, Kira whispered, bending over the baby queue as Martha came in. Looking up with a smile to greet her friend, Kira began frowning instead. Oh, sweetie, what happened? Martha's face was streaked with dried tears, eyes red and puffy. She looked broken. Kira moved forward to hug her friend, and Martha just back with a small cry. In her cube, Grace started making snuffling noises, moving her head from side to side, small whimpers escaping as she grew more distressed. Oh, look at that! Martha caught sight of the baby. Oh no, it was today. Today was collection. Oh, I'm so sorry. I will leave you alone. Kira grabbed her friend's hand and, despite Martha's stiffening, held on and drew her forward, guiding her to sit on the couch. Sit. Breathe. I'll make us all some drinks. Martha just looked blankly at her friend. Kira raised her voice slightly. I'm going to get Gracie's bottle and make us some synthecath, okay? Martha looked towards the kitchen and seemed to realise what she was going to do. Kira squeezed Martha's hand, threw a slightly panicked look at the baby cube, then hurried over to the kitchen area. Grace cried louder and louder, sharp, shrill wails that seemed to pierce Kira's heart. Where is it? Where is it? She muttered to herself. Kira opened 2 cupboards before remembering she'd put the baby formula in with the mugs and glasses. She flipped the drinks machine on and grabbed mugs, a bottle and the formula. When she opened the fridge, she saw the pre-made bottles. Idiot! Scooping a bottle up, Kira flicked on the auto-warmer button, whilst choosing the strong synthecath option for herself and Martha. Martha was fluttering her hands, looking worriedly at the crying baby in the cube next to her, and half rose out of her seat. Should I do something? She asked. No, I've got it. It's her first feed. Loud, isn't she? Kira's voice trembled as her hands shook to finish as quickly as possible. She could feel her scalp prickling as she got hotter. I'm coming, Kira called. Everything pinged at once, so she took Martha her synthecath and picked up her red-faced baby. Shh, shh, shh. Kira began to bob the baby up and down as she went back to the kitchen for the milk. Here, it's here. She put the bottle near Gracie's face and the loud wailing cut off suddenly. Both women exhaled. That was intense. Poor little thing. Oh, I got you. You were hungry, weren't you? It's okay. Kira sat down with Martha. Both women watched the tiny baby drink hungrily. After a few moments, Kira looked up at her friend. What happened, honey? Martha's hands began shaking, sloshing the synthecath. She gasped as the hot liquid spilled. Quickly, she put the mug down on the floor beside her and scrubbed her hands on her trousers, wiping them dry. Martha tried to marshal her thoughts and, without looking at her friend, began speaking in a low monotone. I was walking home from work, through the park, on 4th. It's so tranquil, and I imagine what the trees will look like when, if they ever grow back. It was a normal day at work, the same routine. There was a bee. I wondered if I was imagining things, but it was definitely there. Do you believe me, Kira? Martha begged, peering up at her friend with a note of desperation in her voice, eyebrows drawn together, eyes pleading for a positive response. Kira nodded. She was sure Jed had mentioned a bee at collection. I'm not sure what happened. There was a sound. A man. He grabbed me. Martha started to breathe quicker and quicker. Tears rolled down her face. I can't, Kira. Please don't force me. Shh. It's all right, Ma. It's all right. Kira didn't know what to say. She looked down at Grace, who had stopped feeding and was once again blissfully asleep. Just let me put her down. Martha had drawn her legs up to meet her body and was hugging her knees, rocking backwards and forwards, saying no, under her breath. Kira didn't know what to do, but she couldn't leave her friend in such a state, so she touched her earcom. 47? I need a cocoon for visitor M2, please. The apartment lights took on a soft glow as a sedation patch appeared on the arm of the couch next to Martha, who continued to rock. The patch attached itself to Martha's arm and a sedative was released. Martha's movements slowed until she was still and her breathing returned to normal, then became deeper and calmer. Kira reluctantly placed the baby back in her cube. She had wanted to enjoy their first moments together, but she felt tense and uneasy, sick with worry as she pulled the cocoon fabric from the top of the couch over her friend. Nothing was turning out the way she thought it would today, and she needed to clear her head before she rang Jed. She walked over to the small altar in the corner of the room, and a sense of calm came over her. She lit a candle, sat down, and took a couple of cleansing breaths. Kira imagined herself surrounded by a ball of blue light. With each breath she took in, she drew energy from the earth far beneath her. and with each exhale she visualized all her stress and anxiety leaving the top of her head. When she felt completely calm, Kira thought hard about the light around her and attempted to extend the protective energy from herself to her new daughter and her best friend. Kira was beginning to feel in control of herself again when the door chimed. "IGA," an efficient voice announced. "Frag-it," thought Kira. They weren't supposed to come till tomorrow. She got up and went to the door. As she opened it, Jed and Pete walked up the corridor and stopped behind the officious-looking woman. "Timing," muttered Jed as the three of them entered the apartment.